Consider the brilliant mind, the scholar with libraries at their fingertips, the strategist who can calculate 17 steps ahead, the philosopher who understands the nature of virtue better than any cardinal in Rome. But watch how this same mind crumbles when faced with an opponent of lesser intellect, but sharper instincts, someone willing to cross boundaries the smart person refuses to acknowledge. Machiavelli observed this pattern with cold clarity. Smart people often lose precisely because they are constrained by the very intelligence that should grant them victory. The tragedy is not that wisdom loses to cunning, but that virtue itself becomes a shackle as ruthlessness wears the crown. Look closely at power and its nature. Power shapes every human relation that matters, whether in kingdoms or boardrooms, in families or friendships. In this arena, intelligence carries a profound burden. This burden is called conscience. The clever person builds elaborate moral frameworks, weighing consequences and measuring actions against standards of good and bad. They hesitate. They reconsider. They ask themselves whether an action aligns with their principles. In that moment of hesitation, the ruthless one moves. The ruthless person has already decided that the question itself is irrelevant. Recall the nature of the world as it actually exists, not as dreamers wish it to be. The world is a stage where appearances matter more than truth, where perception defeats reality in every competition, where the man who masters the illusion defeats the man who studies truth. Smart people often mistake understanding for advantage. They believe that if only others could see what they see, if only the masses possessed their reasoning capacity, the rightful order would prevail. But the masses do not want to see what smart people see. The people desire stories, symbols, and certainty. They desire leaders who make decisions without apologizing for them. Machiavelli understood this truth about human nature completely. The ruthless person grasps this fundamental truth instinctively. Such a person does not waste energy on internal conflict. There is no committee of conscience deliberating every move. Action follows without delay. Justifications come after. When a rival stands in the way, the ruthless person removes that obstacle without regret or hesitation. Momentum continues. What advantage does brilliance truly confer when it paralyzes? Consider the fox and the lion in nature. Both are intelligent creatures, but the lion acts from instinct, moving with direct force toward what it desires. The fox must consider the lion's strength and plan accordingly. Yet when the fox faces another fox without hesitation, the calculating fox often falls to the one who simply strikes first with absolute commitment. The intelligent person accumulates knowledge like a merchant accumulates goods, believing that the quantity of understanding generates quality of results. But power does not reward knowledge. Power rewards decisiveness. The ruthless person decides quickly because such a person has eliminated the internal obstacles that slow the intelligent mind. The conscience has been either suppressed or never developed. The comparison to others' welfare has been discarded. The question of whether an action is good has been replaced with a simpler question: will this action advance my position? In the corridors of actual power, the brilliant man or woman often finds themselves outmaneuvered by the cunning and ruthless rival. Because while the intelligent one debates the proper course, the ruthless one has already secured the alliances, spread the rumors, compromised the judges, and positioned themselves as the inevitable choice. By the time the intelligent person finishes their moral calculations, the board has been rearranged and their position undermined. History demonstrates this principle with relentless clarity. The scholarly emperor loses his throne to the general, who simply takes power. The virtuous merchant loses his business to the competitor willing to spread lies about his products. The honest politician loses to the one who trades in favors and makes promises with no intention of keeping them. In each case, the difference in capability is not necessarily vast. The difference lies in willingness, the willingness to operate outside the boundaries that constrain smart people and the virtuous. This is why Machiavelli concluded that the acquisition of power demands ruthlessness. Understand that this is not a celebration of ruthlessness. Rather, it is recognition of how the world operates beneath the surface of pleasant stories. The person who achieves lasting power is not the one who struggles most nobly against this reality, but the one who acknowledges it completely. The ruthless person looks at the game of human affairs and sees the rules as they actually exist, not the rules people wish existed. The intelligent person sees both the actual rules and the ideal rules, and this double vision creates hesitation. The tension between these two types generates the core drama of human history and human affairs. The intelligent person asks, "What will maintain my self-respect?" The ruthless person asks, "What will maintain my power?" These are entirely different questions producing entirely different answers. When the two clash, the person who can live comfortably with their own ruthlessness typically prevails over the person haunted by compromise. There is a paradox here worth examining. The most effective ruthless actors are not stupid. They possess intelligence, but intelligence directed toward a specific goal without the interference of values that might slow their progress. They use their minds as tools of ambition rather than as judges of morality. The brutal general is often highly intelligent about strategy and logistics. The corrupt politician understands psychology and media with great sophistication. Their intelligence serves their ruthlessness. The intelligent person remains caught between two masters. One master is intellectual honesty, the commitment to seeing reality clearly. The other master is moral consistency, the commitment to acting according to principles. These two can conflict dramatically. Seeing reality clearly often reveals that virtue will not be rewarded. Acting according to principle often requires maintaining a pleasant delusion about how the world works. The intelligent person suffers this conflict because the intelligent person cannot easily ignore either obligation. The ruthless person experiences no such conflict. Such a person is free in a way that the virtuous, intelligent person can never be. Not free in any sense that poets celebrate, but free from the constraints that bind the smart person. Free to act without hesitation. Free to adjust truth to circumstance. Free to use people as means without the burden of consideration. This freedom, terrible as it may sound to those bound by conscience, produces practical results that conscience-bound competitors cannot match. Now consider what happens when the intelligent person finally sees this pattern. The realization is painful. Being good does not guarantee winning. Being honest does not guarantee success. The intelligent person has built their entire life on the belief that if you are smart and moral, you will win. But the world does not work this way. Smart people lose to ruthless people. This discovery breaks something inside them. Some intelligent people respond to this discovery by embracing ruthlessness in imitation. They attempt to become what they believe their competitors are, but this rarely succeeds. The person who adopts ruthlessness as a strategy rather than as a fundamental disposition carries the performance awkwardly. They lack the fluency of someone born without hesitation. They second-guess their ruthless moves. They construct elaborate justifications even as they act ruthlessly, and these justifications betray their essential internal conflict. The ruthless person never needs to justify anything. The most dangerous person in any competition is not the pure intellect and not the pure ruthlessness, but rather the person who combines intelligent analysis with ruthless action. Such a person can calculate the exact moment to betray an ally. Such a person can identify the weakness in an opponent's position and exploit it with precision. Such a person can construct persuasive narratives to justify the most transparently selfish actions. This hybrid person is far more dangerous because they possess the strategic sophistication of intelligence directed entirely toward power without any dilution from conscience. Consider the nature of decision-making in moments of genuine crisis or opportunity. The intelligent person's advantage, the ability to see multiple possibilities and weigh various outcomes, becomes a liability under time pressure. When decisions must be made quickly, the person with the clearest, simplest thinking wins. The ruthless person's calculation is simple. Does this advance my interest or not? The intelligent person's calculation is complex. Does this advance my interest while maintaining my integrity, preserving my reputation, respecting the rights of others, and staying consistent with my previously stated principles? Watch how this plays out in the accumulation of small advantages. Power rarely comes in one grand gesture. Power accumulates through 1,000 tiny choices where the ruthless person takes what can be taken while the intelligent person politely declines small opportunities because they seem beneath their dignity or inconsistent with their values. The ruthless person is never insulted by opportunity. Such a person takes what is offered and asks for more. By the time the intelligent person realizes what has happened, the ruthless competitor has accumulated enough advantages to be impossible to defeat. Smart people often mistake knowledge for power. A good plan is not power. Understanding how systems work is not power. Being able to explain why things are wrong is not power. Power is making others do what you want. Power comes from controlling resources, building alliances through fear and obligation, and being willing to punish those who resist. The intelligent person understands this in theory, but cannot act on it effectively. There exists a particular vulnerability in the intelligent person that the ruthless one exploits mercilessly. The intelligent person believes in consistency and coherence. The intelligent person wants their actions to tell a unified story that makes sense when examined closely. The intelligent person wants to be able to explain and justify their choices. The ruthless person has no such need. The ruthless person acts one way with one group and differently with another. The ruthless person makes different promises to different people. The ruthless person changes their position when circumstances change. The intelligent person sees this as dishonest and weak, but it is actually strength, freedom from being trapped by a fixed identity. Observe also how fear operates differently in each type. The intelligent person fears consequences. They imagine future scenarios where their ruthless actions return to haunt them. They worry about karma, about eventual exposure. This fear acts as a brake on their ambition. The ruthless person experiences fear differently. Such a person fears what threatens them right now. The possibility of distant consequences does not weigh heavily, because such a person does not genuinely believe they will be held accountable. The ruthless person often possesses an almost delusional confidence that the rules that bind others do not apply to them. This confidence, however irrational, produces better results than the intelligent person's realistic assessment of risk. The intelligent person's dedication to truth creates another problem. Such a person wants to see reality as it actually is. This forces them to admit uncomfortable facts about their own limits, about how strong their rivals are, and about the real chances of success. The ruthless person feels no such pressure. The ruthless person believes whatever serves them best. If winning seems impossible, the ruthless person simply refuses to accept the fact. If a rival seems stronger, the ruthless person invents stories about hidden weaknesses. This blindness to difficult truth, though it distorts reality, often produces better real-world results than the clearer sight of the intelligent person. Consider how these differences compound over time. In the first years of competition, the advantages may not be obvious. The intelligent person still has momentum and respect. The ruthless person is still establishing position and accumulating resources. But as years go by, the differences become visible. The intelligent person has kept their promises to others, even when those promises no longer help them, and has earned the hatred of people they treated ethically when they had the power to treat them otherwise. The ruthless person has broken every promise that is not useful and has secured the loyalty of people who benefit from ruthless partnership. The intelligent person is surrounded by people who respect them, but do not necessarily support them. The ruthless person is surrounded by people who fear them or profit from serving them. Here lies a paradox that the intelligent person must eventually confront. The acquisition of power requires ruthlessness. Yet the use of power requires a different kind of intelligence, the ability to maintain the system that power depends upon. The ruthless person who climbs to the top through treachery and disregard for others' welfare discovers that they now rule over a population that resembles themselves. Opportunistic, untrustworthy, willing to betray for advantage. The system becomes unstable because there is no element of genuine loyalty, no sense that the ruler's interest aligns with the ruled. Every person in the hierarchy is prepared to overthrow the ruler at the moment they perceive weakness or advantage in doing so. The intelligent person who reaches power rules more stably. People trust them. Stability is valuable. The ruthless person beats the intelligent person in the race to power. The tragedy of the intelligent person is therefore not that they lack capacity for success. Rather, the tragedy is that the paths to power in the world require qualities that violate their nature. The intelligent person faces a choice: remain true to their nature and accept a smaller sphere of influence, or transform themselves into something resembling ruthlessness and accept a kind of internal death. Most choose one form of loss or another. Yet there is another possibility, though it requires both intelligence and a form of ruthlessness working together. The intelligent person can study the ruthless person's methods without adopting their worldview entirely. One can learn to act with decisiveness without requiring the elimination of conscience. One can learn to prioritize one's own interest without requiring the belief that others' interests are contemptible. One can learn to move quickly without requiring the elimination of reflection. But this requires the ruthless application of intelligence itself, turning the full capacity for analysis and understanding directly toward the question of how to gain and keep power while maintaining a degree of internal coherence. This is the path that the most successful leaders walk, and they possess enough intelligence to understand systems and predict consequences. Successful leaders possess enough ruthlessness to make difficult decisions without paralysis. They have learned to operate according to different rules in different contexts, to present different faces to different audiences. But unlike the pure ruthless person, they do this with full understanding of what they are doing rather than from simple lack of capacity for anything else. The intelligence that serves power best is not abstract intelligence. It is not the ability to solve complex mathematical problems or to understand complex philosophical theories. It is practical intelligence, the understanding of how to identify what people want, how to frame situations to your advantage, how to create narratives that others believe, how to build alliances and exploit rivalries. This intelligence, combined with a willingness to do what is necessary, produces results that pure intelligence or pure ruthlessness cannot match alone. But return to the original observation. The person of conscience and genuine principle will still lose to the person willing to violate principle when the stakes are high. This remains true. The person who maintains that they will not lie loses to the person who lies when lies serve their interests. The person who maintains that they will not betray allies loses to the person willing to betray when betrayal advances their position. The person who maintains that they will not steal loses to the person willing to take what can be taken. In competition between these types, the one without limits defeats the one bound by limits. Yet observe what follows. The ruthless person wins the position, wins the prize, wins the power, and then the very qualities that generated victory in competition become liabilities in governance. The inability to be trusted destroys institutional stability. The contempt for others breeds the contempt of subordinates for the ruthless leader. The constant betrayal of allies means that when the ruthless leader most needs support, there is no one willing to provide support. The victory is often hollow. The intelligent person, having lost the competition, often finds that their loss is temporary. The ruthless person system collapses under its own internal contradictions. New opportunities emerge. The intelligent person, having never burned their bridges completely, finds allies still willing to work with them. The intelligent person, having maintained their reputation, finds that this reputation has value in a new context. The intelligent person survives the ruthless person's fall and often achieves power in the aftermath, when power means something more substantial than mere position. This brings us to the deeper understanding beneath the surface observation. The question is not simply why the ruthless defeat the intelligent. The question is what each type seeks beneath the surface of their competition. The ruthless person seeks power itself, the actual ability to force others to serve their will. The intelligent person seeks legitimacy, the acceptance that their dominance is justified and correct. These are not the same thing. True power requires force. But force is exhausting and costly to maintain. Legitimacy requires acceptance. But acceptance cannot be forced without undermining the legitimacy. The ruthless person achieves force at the cost of requiring constant vigilance and effort to maintain control. The intelligent person who achieves legitimacy finds that power becomes almost effortless because people accept the existing order and cooperate within it voluntarily. The question of whether intelligence or ruthlessness defeats the other must therefore be refined. In short-term competition for immediate advantage, ruthlessness defeats intelligence. In long-term competition for enduring power, a combination of intelligence and ruthlessness, with ruthlessness deployed strategically and selectively rather than universally, defeats pure ruthlessness that lacks strategic restraint. And in terms of the actual flourishing that power enables, intelligence combined with enough ruthlessness to secure position produces outcomes superior to pure ruthlessness, which tends to become self-destructive. But the person caught in immediate competition should not console themselves with this perspective. The immediate outcome matters. The intelligent person who loses today is not comforted by the knowledge that the ruthless victor might lose tomorrow. The person defeated in the present moment faces consequences in the present moment. Therefore, the observation that must guide the intelligent person's actions is this: one must learn to blend ruthlessness into one's intelligence, or accept that one will be defeated by those willing to do what you will not do. Smart people who ignore this principle do so at their peril. Machiavelli was not offering moral guidance here. He was offering practical recognition of how competition actually functions. The person who insists on playing by the rules while competitors play by no rules will eventually be defeated by competitors who play by no rules. There is no escape from this truth through virtue or through elaborate moral reasoning. Yet, and this is crucial, the transformation into ruthlessness does not require becoming other than oneself. It requires turning one's intelligence toward the question of one's own interest with the same rigor one might apply to scholarly questions. It requires asking what one truly wants, and then asking what must be done to obtain that. It requires examining the obstacles, whether those obstacles are moral commitments or practical barriers, and then deciding which obstacles must be overcome and which can be worked around. This is not becoming evil. This is becoming realistic. The intelligent person often mistakes ruthlessness for something simpler than it is. The intelligent person imagines that ruthlessness means constant cruelty or perpetual betrayal or uncontrolled aggression. In fact, the ruthless person is often perfectly kind to allies and cooperative with those whose interests align with their own. The ruthless person shows discipline and restraint in many situations. The ruthlessness is directed strategically toward specific objectives. The ruthless person is not cruel for the sake of cruelty, but instrumental in their use of cruelty when it serves their purposes. This distinction matters. The intelligent person can develop strategic ruthlessness without becoming the caricature of the cruel tyrant. One can be willing to sacrifice others' comfort for one's own advancement without requiring enjoyment of that sacrifice. One can be willing to lie when necessary without becoming someone who lies constantly about everything. One can be willing to betray when benefit requires betrayal without betraying everyone perpetually. This selective ruthlessness, informed by intelligence, is far more effective than the universal ruthlessness of someone who lacks the intelligence to deploy cruelty strategically. The final insight concerns what is actually at stake in the competition between the intelligent and the ruthless. It is not ultimately about who deserves power or who would use power most wisely. It is about who understands the nature of power and who does not. The intelligent person often hopes that understanding will be rewarded. The ruthless person understands that understanding is irrelevant. Only results matter. And results come from action, not from analysis. The ruthless person acts. The intelligent person reflects. The ruthless person's reflection comes after the victory. The world does not reward understanding in any direct way. The world rewards the person who forces others to accept their terms. The person who understands this and acts accordingly will win against the person who understands this but hopes it is not true. The person who combines both understanding with action will defeat both the pure intellectual and the purely ruthless actor. This is the lesson that must be absorbed completely. Not as moral truth, there is no moral truth here, but as practical truth about how human beings compete and how power actually accumulates. The intelligent person who accepts this can begin to build what the purely ruthless person cannot maintain, a system of power that endures. The ruthless person without intelligence builds a system of power that collapses because it depends on perpetual force and generates constant resistance. The intelligent person who combines selective ruthlessness builds a system where most people accept their subordinate position as inevitable or even just. This is the superior form of power, not because it is more virtuous, but because it is more stable and requires less constant maintenance.